Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in ma ba'du. We are starting the work Al-Haiyah by the great Imam Abi Bakr ibn Abi Dawud rahimahullah ta'ala. He was the son of the famous Abu Dawud as-Sijistani, Sahib al-Sunan, the one that authored the Sunan Abi Dawud. And a lot can be said about this great Imam who's a Hafiz. He lived during the time of the Salaf. If you take the Salaf to be the first 300 years, he lived during that time. He actually passed away. Some said like 310 or 316 Hijriya. So he lived early on. And his Aqeedah, of course, represents the way of the Salaf. And we're going to talk about what that means. So this poem, disclaimer about the poem. So we're looking at 33 lines or so. Some might have 34 or more than that, up to 38, 39 lines, some additions. But 33, and Allah knows best, is the most authentic one. And we're going to go with the 33 lines of this Haiyah. Also, some of the wordings might be different, so note that. But, I mean, the meaning, inshallah, will stay pretty much the same about what is meant to be said, inshallah. And note that depending how you read certain words, the grammar might be off. So, like, not that it's off, but it's different ways of reading that one line of poetry. So that's disclaimers, inshallah. So the author, he starts off his poem. Again, it's only 33 lines, easy to memorize. I recommend everyone memorizes it. The author starts off by saying, تمسك بحبل الله واتبع الهدى ولا تك بدعيا لعلك تفلح ودن بكتاب الله والسنن التي أتت عن رسول الله تنجو وتربح تنجو وتربح. So what is the author in these first two lines of poetry saying? So تمسك بحبل الله, hold tightly to the rope of Allah. That's what it translates to me. And the rope of Allah is the Quran. And you see that, of course, in the Quran, the ayah about talking about the habl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Mufassirin say it's the Quran. The rope of Allah and the guidance. And do not be an innovator so that you might be successful. وَدِنْ بِكِتَابِ اللَّهِ وَالسُّنَنِ الَّتِي, and practice religion based on the book of Allah and the Sunnah, which has come from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so you'll be saved and earn reward. So, a couple of things there. Of course, following the Quran and Sunnah. People out there, they're going to say, follow the Quran and the Sunnah. And this means following their sheikhs of the last 20 years, or following Imam Ibn Taymiyyah's interpretation of it, or Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab's interpretation of it. And all of the Muslims, especially the great scholars, follow the Quran and Sunnah. There's different usul, different things to consider about the proofs. You know, we're not Zahiriyya, where you just take the apparent of a hadith that you saw and you made a ruling, especially if it goes against ijma'. So the great Imams, they follow the Quran and the Sunnah, right? And we would prefer the interpretation of Imam Malik over your sheikh that lived recently or still alive. So that's one thing. And then what ataku bid'iyya, and talk about bid'ah. The thing of bid'ah has really gone out of hand. Why? Firstly, you know, they quote Imam al-Shatibi, Abu Ishaq al-Shatibi in his Al-I'tisam, great book, but they quote the famous definition of bid'ah, and then they go and they make pretty much tabdi', calling people innovators. They're innovating in this and that. So firstly, Imam al-Shatibi, he was Maliki, he was Ash'ari, and he was a Sufi. So why are you taking the definition of bid'ah from a mubtadi'? That's the question, right? Of course, we don't believe he's a mubtadi', but that's according to how they think. So that's something important to know. And the thing about bid'ah, there's two types of bid'ah. Imam Shafi'i in his Risala, he said there's a good bid'ah and bad bid'ah. Imam al-Ghazali followed up on that, and all the scholars after that, they followed that. Imam al-Izz ibn Abd salam, the famous scholar, Shafi'i, Ashari, Shaduli scholar, he said that it's 5 types, right? And all these proofs that they use, kullu bid'atin dalala, that kul firstly comes in the Quran, that doesn't necessarily mean everything. And secondly, they use the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha. What does it say? ما أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه. That is not from it. Right? So when you talk about the Mawlid being bid'ah and all that, the Mawlid is what? Reading Quran, doing dhikr, sitting salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, feeding people, reading seerah and shama'il. That's all from the religion. And then we have the hadith, man sanna fil Islam sunnatin hasana, and so on, the hadith that's known, right? So that explains these other hadith. So please, and especially when you have like the overwhelming majority of the scholars, for example, we'll use the Mawlid, saying the Mawlid is at least permissible, and then you come and you say it's a bid'ah and it's haram. I mean, it's just, again, that's what happens when you have a disconnected chain to the scholars and the way of Ahlu Sunnah all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ. So that's that with regards to the first 2 lines. And now we get to the good parts, and it's all good parts, of course. وَقُلْ غَيْرُ مَخْلُوقٍ كَلَامُ مَلِيكِنَا بِذَلِكَ دَانَ الْأَتْقِيَاءَ وَأَفْصَحُ. So this is talking about this, we translate to mean speech, kalam, the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that say that not a created thing is we'll say speech. Malikina, our great king, talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's Malik and Malik Yawmiddin, for example. Such was the religious position of the pious ones who spoke well. So, note here that this is the position of Ahl Sunnah. The Quran is not created, uncreated. Of course, the famous thing with Imam Ahmad and the Mu'tazila, what happened? The Mu'tazila said the Quran was created, and they tested the scholars, and they tortured the scholars. Imam Ahmad famously won that. So Imam Ahmad, he just said the Quran was uncreated, and he stopped there. And that's the way of the Salaf, right? And that's the way of the Hanabila. Obviously, they affirm the harf and the sawt, the mafawwid of the Hanabila. The Asha'ira, they say it's dal madlul. What does that mean? That means, okay, like the sifa of kalam with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, there's no beginning, no end to it. It's uncreated, without harf and sawt, without letter and sound. And we'll translate harf and sawt to mean letter and sound there. And then the dal is like our speech, the pages of the Quran, right? What we have, like the things that like have a beginning and an end. That is the or the dal, not the madlul. The madlul is the sifa with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the Asha'ira say is the kalam nafsi. And the Maturidis, they don't agree with, they have similar belief to that. They agree with the Asha'ira in that the Quran is not harf and sawt, contrary to the Hanabila. But again, Ahl Sunnah know as well are the 3 schools of Aqeedah, which is the Mufawwidha of the Hanabila, the ones that do Tafwid, not the Ithbat, the way of the Ibn Taymiyyah, and the way of the Asha'ira, the way of the Maturidiyya, the 3 schools of Aqeedah there. And the 4 schools of Fiqh, the Hanafiyya, the Malikiyya, the Shafi'i, and the Hanabila. And then the way of Suluk, thinking well of the awliya and the salihin. Obviously, even going back to the Sahaba, of course, Tabi'in and so on, but later the great ones that are like Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, Qaddasallahu sirrahu, rahimahullah ta'ala, and Abu Hasan al-Shadili, and and so on and so forth. That is the way of Ahl Sunnah is 3. Going back to the hadith of Jibreel, which is Islam, Iman, Ihsan. Islam is the fiqh, Iman is the Aqeedah, and Ihsan is all of that, tasawwuf, tazkiyat an-nafs, and so on. So inshallah we'll end on that note, inshallah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.